Hello, pocket knife community, knife lovers, knife enthusiasts, interested viewers. Folder here. So, some pocket knives have a whole bunch of screws down the side, right? Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. Some pocket knives have only a couple. 1, 2. This is for the clip. Turn them over. Let's see, something else here. That's something like the Arius that only has 2 screws here. So there's all different configurations of screws. Look, the Giant Mouse has 3, right? The Grand has 3 down the back. So that's something that's all over the place, it seems like. But what isn't all over the place, what is consistent about every single folding knife is the main pivot. Every single knife that you see has a pivot that the tang that the blade itself sort of rides on, and that pivot is sandwiched by different materials. It could be bearings, it could be bronze washers, it could be nylon washers, it could be whatever. So there's different materials they use as a buffer between the knife scales and the actual blade itself. So that part's consistent, but what isn't consistent is the way that these main pivots are designed. And the standard pivot, which I'll give an example of a standard pivot, we can use the Canis as an example. If you look at the main pivot on a Canis, it's small. It has tooling. It has dual-sided tooling. And that's kind of how main pivots traditionally were designed. When you look at a knife with a modern day main pivot, let's go with the Mini Momo, right? So this is a much smaller knife than a Canis, right? Oh man, much smaller knife. But if you notice, the pivot is much larger because today they just use bigger pivots. These small, tiny pivots are just not as efficient as larger ones. And what else we can ascertain is that the pivots, also being much larger than previously designed, are also single-sided, meaning there's only tooling on one side to remove that pivot. So, we would kind of hope that this is something that the industry is going to get away from and move towards pivoting like this. And just an example, you have a Koenig Arius. That design's been around forever. If you notice, the tooling is on one side, and it's actually captured in the frame on the other side, which is a really beautiful design. Okay, and of course with the ZT, basically the Hinderer design is also tooling on one side and a nice base plate look on the other side helps really highlight the symmetry, overall symmetry of the knife. And I'm going to call out some manufacturers on this. I normally don't like that. I normally don't just go out criticizing But I don't know. I feel like I can criticize some manufacturers because um, even in the criticism, um, I still absolutely love the brand and the products. So when you kind of like love the brand and the products, you kind of feel like you can say bad things about them. It's almost like family. I could talk bad about my family. You can't say nothing about my brother, but I can. That type of thing. Um, so yeah. So let's just look at a couple of examples because I'm gonna use Spyderco as an example, and they're gonna be mainly the brand that I criticize because they just haven't done anything to move forward with main pivots. As amazing as Spyderco models are, I don't know why they haven't moved towards the advancement. Okay, so let's just get an example here. Um, and I'm gonna show you how manufacturers step up their main pivots when they step up the level in their products. Here we have a Giant Mouse Ace Grand in Camas micarta. Okay, it's a base model basically, or I mean they're not really base models. These models are amazing anyway, but I'm just using this as an example for the main pivot. And then when you look at an example of the Ace Grand in the upgraded trim, carbon fiber, I think these are both Elmax steel, so the steel isn't changed, right? They're both Elmax. Oops. But if you notice that the carbon fiber has an oversized main pivot, right? Because that's part of that looks better than that. And then when you move to the GM5, the GMP5, and you look at the main pivot on the GMP5, it's actually even more prolific than the upgraded ultra smooth carbon fiber here. So the pivots, along with the trim, is what this manufacturer has done with that main pivot. Another example of Giant Mouse, the Ace Jutland. Ace Jutland in G10. G10 standard version G10. This is also Elmax. I wasn't sure, but it says it and I believe it. And you see the size of the main pivot here. Still leaps over the Spyderco. Spyderco's got that. I mean, I don't know what Spyderco's doing with that pivot stuff, but. And here we have the Jutland in the blackout edition, where it has a canvas micarta, fully black PVD coated blade. I think it's Magna Cut. It is. So they went from Elmax to Magna Cut, and what they do with the main pivot, they upgraded it. And does this function better than this? No. From a functional standpoint, it doesn't. But I'm just saying, from an aesthetic standpoint, a oversized main pivot, captured main pivot, looks good. I'm going to give an example of 4 knives that have really ridiculous oversized and or captured main pivots that really upgrade the look of the knife. Tuya Voodoo. Got the size of that pivot. It's huge. Captured. Tooling on one side, totally smooth on the opposite side. The Miguron Arma. Huge knife. Absolutely enormous. And this is an example of a knife that actually needs to have a big pivot. You couldn't put like a small little Spyderco pivot on this. This knife is tremendous. But it has an oversized pivot. It doesn't even look big on this knife, with tooling on one side. And the action on this knife, as massive as it is just as good as knives, not even a fraction of its size. Um, you have the Hawk. Well, no, actually, let me bring out the Berg Blades Tick. One of my favorite knives. One best looking blade in my collection for 2024. And if you notice, this has a massive, oversized main pivot. They actually did tooling on both sides. It would have been nice if it was captured on one side, but at least it's massive. Fits the knife, it makes the knife look incredible, and it just adds to the overall aura of the knife. And then an example of a manufacturer, the Hawk, that's insane. They took the main pivot to the next level, where they just basically lost their minds. It does have tooling on both sides, but the main pivot isn't massive. It's ginormous. But there might be some validity to a bigger main pivot in size, adding to more stability of the knife. And I'm going to tell you, looking at examples of these knives, and I'm going to criticize Spyderco right now, because Spyderco hasn't done anything with their main pivots. I'm not really sure what it is. Do they have to? No. Obviously, they work amazing. I love Spyderco. It's my favorite brand of knife. But guys, I mean, really? PM2. I know the PM2's already been designed, but you could have a huge main pivot. All you have to do is come out with a model where the tooling is a little bit different on the scaling and come out with something, you know. I mean, look at the pivot size on a Spyderco. It's just absolutely, you know, I mean, really? It's just, you know, yeah, across the board, you know. Got your Shaman. This is a beefy knife. This is a really heavy duty knife. Does an oversized main pivot mean that it can handle more work? No. But it makes it has a very antiquated look to it. There's no there's tooling on both sides, so there's no single-sided pivot provisions. There's no capturing of the pivot, like even with the Koenig areas with this frame scale captured pivot here that locks on one side. Doesn't have anything and no provisions like that. And you know, it's just model after model with Spyderco. There's no Spyderco out there, I believe, that indulges in captured or oversized main pivots. Matter of fact, the industry standard isn't even calling this oversized that much anymore. To be honest with you, it's almost like, you know, I noticed it the most when I looked at my Bodacious. I was just looking at this knife, and this is one of my favorite knives in my collection. I carry this knife more than any other knife in my collection. Every day I have this in my pocket. Even if I have another knife, I more likely than not will have this. I can honestly say that as far as carrying, this is my favorite knife. And looking at it, it just looks old to me. I mean, just with that, you know, especially since, you know, so many manufacturers are doing something with that main pivot to enhance their looks. I mean, look at the Nexusia, for goodness sakes. We Knives. I mean, not only do they have a captured main pivot with tooling only on one side, but look at it. It's like, you know, looks like a jewel. So it's nice to kind of see that upgraded, you know, upgraded main pivot to enhance the design of the knives. And yeah, sorry Spyderco, I had to pick on you a little bit. It's only because I love you though. It would be nice to see either an update from Spyderco where they start actually doing something like that, That would be really nice. Or I guess come out with a new model that they don't have to though. You could easily make an existing Spyderco knife with the tooling different on the scales for a a oversized main pivot. These pivots are the same. With this, they're all the same size, right? With T8s. Yeah, so that wouldn't change anything. Right. Why is a tenon fit in here? Really? Wow, that's massive. I don't know why that would be. Yeah, this is an 8. Right. This oversized pivot is still just an 8. You know what I mean? It's not like it's, yeah, even in Hawk, look, it's still a T8. So, but it was a 10. Wow, it is. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, so that's even ridiculous, even more ridiculous. In the Bodacious, or at least in this one, I have a 10 in here. I think I changed the screws though. Wait, do I have my other Bodacious? Or how about, let me see. How about the Shaman? Yeah, no, it's a 10. So yeah, where Spyderco is upping their bolt size on these knives because they're heavy, they're beefy, they have big, huge blades. Look at the size of this blade; it's enormous, right? They're upgrading the actual hardware, but they're not doing anything for the aesthetics. So anyway, all right, that's all I got. Just wanted to touch base on main pivots because it is probably the one besides having a blade, because it's a knife, it's probably the one characteristic that is synonymous with all folders. They have to have a main pivot. All right, thanks.